Buju, Wagosh Indigu, Migizi Indodem Gazagasquaji Mekag Indunjiba. Hello to all of you on the team at Detroit Lakes Public Schools. My name is Anton Treuer, and I'm the author of Everything You Wanted to Know About Indians But Were Afraid to Ask. I gave you a brief introduction in my Ojibwe language to say that my native name is Wagosh, which means fox. I'm from the Eagle Clan, and I come from Leech Lake. I'm really excited that your entire team has agreed to take on a one read of my book. And in addition to that, I will be coming to you to have an open conversation about not just the content of the book, but about all kinds of things related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and your really important and heroic efforts to reach all of the kids in your district with great success. It's challenging work, and these are contentious times. I think a lot of us feel like we're walking around on eggshells sometimes, but it's really great to see you all leaning into the effort. I sometimes use an analogy with this kind of work. Like if I hold up my finger and I say, "What is this?" I could almost start a fight unless we clarify the language that we're using to talk about it. Like in the language of body parts, that's indeed a finger. But in the language of numbers, well, that's one. In the language of space, that's up. So who's right? And they're all right. It's a matter of perspective or language that we're using to talk about it. All of us as human beings have our own lived experiences, and nobody sees the world the way that it is. We all see the world the way that we are, and we're all different. So it's really, really helpful for us in education when we can look at something even as simple as a finger and see it as a finger and one and up and all the other many things that it can be. In this case, there's no one objective truth, there's more than one right perspective. And it's like that with many topics in education and just navigating our diverse and complex society. As you start digging in to the book, Everything You Wanted to Know About Indians But Were Afraid to Ask, I want to encourage you to think about the TED Talk, The Danger of a Single Story by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. And there's a link that has been sent to you as well, so you can check it out. In her great TED Talk, which has had millions of views, she says that the problem with stereotypes is not so much that they are incorrect as much as they are incomplete. That a lot of times we get a little piece of information and then we base our assumptions about an entire group of people or experiences on that. And all of us do this. So if we took one thin slice of white America, like impoverished, rural, white Appalachia, and said, that must be how it is for white people, we'd have a really distorted, single story narrative of that experience. And similarly, if we just looked at white people living in New York's Upper East Side, we'd be thinking, wow, everyone has everything handed on a silver platter. And that's not the entirety of the white experience either. There's a diversity of experiences, economic realities, political positions, and so forth. And as you start digging into the book, you'll find that it's that way with Native people too. We don't all vote the same way. We don't all worship God the same way. We don't all have the same cultural beliefs and practices. There's a lot of diversity out there. As you navigate that, um, I hope that it'll help illuminate the landscape of Native America for you a little better. There are many sections in the book, and as you start digging in, there's information on terminology, on history, religion, and culture, indigenous languages. There's information also on politics, economics, and then as you get a little deeper into the book, there's a big section on education. And I hope that you'll pay special attention to that section because we'll be talking about it when I come to see you. And there's also a section on social activism. And those are topics that will be on the minds of your students as you lean into these topics as well. And so that'll be really helpful background information to prepare you for not just my visit, but whatever's going to be coming at you in the course of your regular work efforts. Ultimately, our country is a really diverse place. Right now, the majority of our K 12 students in America are students of color. And so, even just thinking about the white students in your school district, we should want them to be fully prepared for the world that they're going to live in and work in and go to school in, not just when they're in Detroit Lakes, but for the rest of their lives. And that world will be a diverse place. And it kind of doesn't matter Democrats, Republicans, who's controlling immigration policy or things like that. That's who's here. And that's not going to change. So we should prepare them for the world they'll actually live in. And that means equip them with some tools to navigate racial diversity and cultural diversity and so forth. And those topics don't have to be so scary if we have good information. We understand that there isn't a single story narrative for any group of people. And we can then bring good questions to further expand our own understanding and to help make the world a better place. I sometimes use an analogy when approaching this kind of work. When my parents were getting started, my father was actually not native at all. He was an Austrian Jewish immigrant and a Holocaust survivor. And his entire family was killed in the Holocaust except for himself, two cousins, and both of his parents, who all eventually made it out. But over 300 family members were killed in the Holocaust. He eventually, as a teenager, made his way to Minnesota, met my mom, and here I am. My mom grew up in a village called Bena in the heart of the Leech Lake Reservation and experienced tremendous poverty. But as they were getting started, you could say my dad was hitting the restart button. My mother was trying to find a pathway out of poverty. And my father had put in a bid on a piece of tax forfeited property. He got a letter back saying, "Yours is the only bid that we received. It's not even enough to cover the delinquent taxes. Can you find a couple hundred extra dollars?" Which he borrowed and got a pretty big piece of property here in rural northern Minnesota for relatively little money. At one point in time, it had probably been a virgin white pine forest that had been clear cut and turned into farm fields. So when he got it, it was all wide open fields. And what he did is he started planting trees. And in fact, he planted all of the trees in this picture here, and it completely transformed the landscape and the ecosystem. And that was one guy with a child labor force. That was me. And it changed the entire environment and the ecosystem. It's so incredible. When I think about the important work that we have to do in education, we look around and we look at race relations or climate change or racially predictable disparities in education, and it seems so difficult and insurmountable. But we don't have to take this mountain of problems that humans have been making for thousands of years and move that whole mountain today. The change really happens as we plant the seeds and we nourish them and we help them grow, because it can change the landscape and the entire ecosystem. That's what you're doing in education. It's such an empowered position to be in. Every time we teach children or equip them with tools to navigate this diverse world that we all live in, it's changing the environment and the ecosystem that nourishes all of us. Yours is heroic work. It is really important work, but it is challenging work on many different fronts. And I'm excited for you to get a chance to look at the book, but also to open up a really rich conversation between me and you. And as you dig into the book, jot down your questions and feel free. Here's a link to my website. You can find more information to help you dig deeper yet. So on my website, I have lists of books that are authored by Native Americans, kind of broken down in a range of topics that can help you lean in and find more information yet. There's a list of other books that's published in the back of everything you wanted to know about Indians, but were afraid to ask as well. And then I also have a YouTube channel. So there's even a YouTube video on how can teachers find more information and tools that can be useful in teaching about Native American history and culture, and a whole variety of other topics. So as you dig in, don't just engage with my voice, but look for the variety of voices and perspectives that are out there. I'm not trying to indoctrinate anyone into my personal perspective, but simply to illuminate the many perspectives that are out there so you can chart your own path forward, not just in your own life, but in your important work with our kids. So thank you so much for leaning in. There's a great quote by Margaret Mead: "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." So when I think about the work that we're going to embark upon, who are those thoughtful, committed citizens? And they're you. I believe in you to do this work, and I believe in just how important the work is to do. Thank you so much. Miigwech.